This talk is A Brave New World. And as you know, I study, I write, I research, and then right before I get ready to do the final rehearsing, I ask myself to put the talk into 3 or 4 words. And that way it just keeps me focused and it gets the message real clear. And so the 3 or 4 words for this time is fear less and love more. And the name of the talk is A Brave New World. So the song that we have here by Dolly Parton was written actually only 2 months ago. It was written in response to COVID. And you can YouTube her and see all of the words. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'm going to read some that are really important. It starts out, when life is good again, I'll be a better friend, a bigger person when life is good again, more thoughtful than I've been. I'll be so different then, more in the moment when life is good again. I'll open up my heart and let the whole world in and try to make amends when life is good again. We've been brought to our knees. We've been so ill at ease. There are no guarantees, but you know life goes on. This too shall pass away. Bring new and different days. We need to change our ways and right our wrongs. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So God has forced a huge worldwide timeout. We need to change our priorities and become the best people we were meant to be, not caught up in materialism and distractions. We need to be more compassionate, empathetic, and more open to showing love. So all of the authors, many, many, many authors that have written about COVID in the last month or so, all of them say that fear is what is holding us back, and love is always, always the answer. So in order to have a brave new world, we have to get out of our comfort zone. So there are 2 major crises that are happening right now. There is COVID and man's inhumanity to man. I will focus on COVID today and talk more about the upheaval we are having with regard to racism in my upcoming talk, One People United. Both crises are totally out of alignment with God's world. Both come from places of fear. Both can only be healed by having more courage and loving more. I can't change you, but I can change me, and that is my job. So when we look at scriptural references to courage and bravery, we see 2 Samuel 17:10 that says, even the bravest soldier whose heart is like the heart of a lion will melt with fear, for all Israel knows that your father is a fighter, and those with whom are brave. It reminds us that when we are focused to God and when we keep ourselves aware that God is on our side every single moment, we will be brave and our hearts will take over our minds. And that's what I'm going to be asking us to do a lot today, to have our hearts take over our minds, because love comes from the heart and courage comes from the heart. So we're going to be focusing on that. 1 Chronicles 19:13 says, be strong and let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. The Lord will do what is good in his sight. If we stay aligned with our soul's purpose of being loving and genuine and authentic, we will be able to look fear in the face and know that we have done our best. If we look at Deuteronomy 31:6, it says, be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. That's one of my very favorite all-time verses. So bravery is part of courage. The word courage means from the heart. The word corps is a French word that means heart. And we need to have a new set of priorities if we're going to have a brave new world. So it's not about being the strongest in battle. It's about being the strongest in the heart, about loving bigger and bolder across all socioeconomic, religious, and cultural lines. We need to be more compassionate. So how do we do that? Well, when we are with someone, we have to take a moment to ask what that person must be going through right now. We need to listen more. Don't plan our words. Make sure we are really hearing what the other person we are interacting with is trying to tell us. Don't take their words personally. Understand more what a day in their life is like. It is not always about us. Be more sensitive to others' needs. We need to care more. We need to be more compassionate. We need to make amends for our wrongs. We need to forgive others, and we need to give of our time. That's the most important quality that we have, is our time. Neil Donald Walsh, in his book One in Conversations with God, he's got 3 books, but in the first book it says, when he was asking God, how will I know when I'm hearing your voice? God answers, mine is always your highest thought, your clearest word, your grandest feeling. Anything else is from another source. The highest thought is always that thought that contains joy. The clearest words are those words that contain truth. The grandest feeling is that feeling which you call love. Joy, truth, love. And he continues, every human thought and every human action is based in either love or fear. There is no other human motivation. And all of you, as you know, the Course in Miracles, all of you who study the Course in Miracles, that you hear over and over and over, there is no other motivation but fear or love. So you always have to choose between the 2 of them. So Oprah, in her discussion, Your Life in Focus, A Vision Forward, speaks about whatever is breaking you down is actually breaking you open. We talked about this before when we had the discussion about Glennon Doyle. She says, the sooner you make the shift, the sooner you see the possibility that every crisis is actually here to ask you a question. And the question is, what is this here to teach me? The purpose is ultimately to live out our most closest expression of who we really are, to be our most loving, to be our true, authentic selves. To have authentic power, Gary Zukav talks about in his book, The Seat of the Soul, we must make sure that our personality aligns with our soul, with who we are meant to be. And I believe that soul is always the perfect manifestation of God's love. So this discussion is about the change you want to see. I cannot change you, I can only change me. So we have to be our best selves. When you are at peace, you have more power than when you are in anger, pain, or fear. Jay Shetty, who is a former monk and now a motivational speaker and author, talks about resilience being a muscle. The last time we had a talk together, we talked about how you need to put yourself in uncomfortable situations so that you can build up the muscle of dealing with fear. If you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, you get stronger and stronger and better about it. Well, he's talking about resilience being a muscle. And he says that you always have to choose growth, even in the most difficult times. He says pain doesn't weaken you, it strengthens you, and that's what resilience is. And that every new challenge requires new skills, and you have to take small steps for big change. So he talks about the difference between escape versus elevate. So escape is instant gratification, and we talk about that all the time. So when you go out and buy yourself a shirt so that you feel better, that's escaping. So the opposite of that is elevating. And elevating is when you change yourself so that you can be the person that you really want to be. So he uses the acronym TIME to teach us how to build up resilience. So T is for thankfulness. And you hear me talk all the time about how gratitude is the fastest way to get yourself connected to God, when you get in gratitude and you make your gratitude list. But he's talking about expressing your gratitude to someone else. So it's not only that you wake up in the morning and say thank you for all the things that are so great, but that you reach out to the people that love you and that you love and that are meaningful to you, and you tell them what you appreciate about them. So I is for inspiration, and that reminds us that our thoughts create our reality, and it is our job to put in the right thoughts. So we need to be reading, we need to be listening to spiritual teachers, we need to be studying, we need to be filling our mind with the thoughts that are going to create a new reality for us so that we get closer and closer to being God's manifestation of love. So M is for meditation. We talk all the time about how meditation is so important, but he describes meditation as being a meeting with yourself. And I thought that was very, very cool. That the question is, you ask yourself the question, how am I doing today? And what can I change to make me feel better? So you have a meeting with yourself and you ask yourself those questions. So E is for exercise or movement, and he talks about the fact that our body needs to be in physical alignment as well as our souls and our hearts. So if your body is not working well, you need to be taking care of yourself. So we talked before about sleep. Sleep is really, really important. So you need to make sure you're sleeping. You need to make sure you're eating. You need to make sure that you're just taking a walk, just walk around the block, but get some exercise, because your body needs to be in alignment with truth also. So he talks about the need to adapt, and he says that's a form of self-care as well. So our lives under COVID have changed us remarkably, and we have to learn new tools so that we are able to better cope with the world as it's going to be different after COVID. And so you need to ask yourself the question, what is happening? How do I respond, and how can I accept it? And then when you get it together, You say, how can I use this to help somebody else? I have it. Now, how do I share it? Iyanla Van Zandt has been doing daily meditations online. I think she's at day 154 now with regard to COVID. So she does a meditation and then she does a talk, and she lets people participate online as well. So it's a group effort. But her major message during the whole time of COVID is fear not. So fear is an energy that attracts what we want to avoid. It's not going to keep COVID away. It only causes the energy in our mind that leads us to a place of stress. So start your day with prayer and affirmation and energizing yourself and centering yourself and grounding yourself. So do you ever notice how when things don't really matter much, they're really easy? So when you're going through your day and you have to write a report and you pull out your laptop and everything's good, but when you're getting ready for a test or something that's really important, all of a sudden your email will go down and your toaster will burn and your lights will go out. Everything starts going wrong. And what we understand is that fear is an energy. And so when you send that energy out into the world, you're going to cause all of these outside ramifications to happen because you're centered in fear. And so while we're talking about this ability to change yourself, you need to always be asking yourself, what am I in fear now and what can I change? And you need to do your work to get yourself stabilized again. And if you have any questions about that, you can always ask me and we'll talk about that too. But I have something that I've been using for years now. So as you know, I really, really love Abraham Hicks. And she has about a 12-minute meditation that's called Everything is Always Working Out for Me. And what I do is when I'm getting myself out of sorts, I remember to listen to that. And that meditation talks about everything is always working out for me. And it reminds me that God's in charge. I'm not. That I need to have faith in the fact that there is a reason for everything that's happening and that it is meant to stretch us and help us to grow and to be better people, and to help erase the fear, because fear is something you need to talk back to, just like there are voices in your head all the time. Fear is something you need to talk back to all the time. And so using that quote, everything is always working out for me, is something that has worked for me for years. And so all of the major teachers talk about fear, and they say, don't let fear become a way of life. Start out your day by being grounded. Also limit your intake of doom and gloom. So you've heard me talk over and over again, don't be watching the CNN all day long. Don't be watching the news. I understand you need to click on to hear what's happening. I understand that you need to know a certain amount of detail so that you can function in the world, but don't be sitting in front of the TV watching the news all day long. It's just going to put you in a place of fear, and it's going to make it worse for you. Listen to your body. So if your body is telling you that it's stressed out, maybe take a walk, maybe take a hot bath, maybe do a meditation. Listen to what your body is trying to tell you, but you need to move out of the experience of fear. So fear also weakens your immune system. And so we need to understand that, we walk by faith and not by sight. That's 2 Corinthians 5-7. Remember to love. Remember that there's no wall or barrier that love cannot penetrate. So again, the whole message is cut back on the fear and cut more on the love. So COVID has caused us to have a big reset button. Interestingly enough, when people are suffering from the sickness of actually having COVID, it attacks the brain and the lungs. So it attacks your ability to think straight, and it attacks your ability to breathe. So I think metaphysically, it's very, very interesting that we're in this period of COVID, and those are the two major organs. So we need to be paying attention to all of that too. So we're forced to sit home with ourselves. Our fears are coming up beyond those of COVID. So what all of the teachers have realized is that the fears that you're bringing into this time of COVID are not just about COVID. They're your whole lifetime worth of fears. But you've been running from them so long by keeping you distracted, by going back and forth to work, by running to the shopping mall. So all that we've been doing is keeping us so that we don't feel our fears. But when you sit still, the fears become overwhelming. And so there are several tools that we can teach ourselves to overcome that, but just be aware that that's really big. And we've all been equalized because of COVID. So people's professional status, their financial status, all of that, their distracting activities, all of that has been taken away from everyone. So we're all sitting in the same boat right now. So Elizabeth Lesser, in her book, Broken Open, talks about difficult times can help us grow. She says, strangely enough, our most difficult, broken times, these are the times we are brought to our knees and our hearts can open. If we fight these times and fight the opening, we live a sort of half of a life. We have to open into the brokenness, and that's when we blossom. When we are fighting life, we are swimming against the current, and that is the opposite of our spiritual instinct. So relax into the mystery of life and look for the question in it all. So living with COVID and coming through to the other side of COVID is asking us to become our greatest selves, to live up to our potential, to be all that God wants us to be. And so I went through looking for stories of, I'm always looking for hero stories. And the hero stories of the nurses and the doctors in the ICUs and the ERs are absolutely overwhelming. The grace that they are showing under this immense amount of pressure with not enough equipment, not enough PPE, not enough space to plug in the equipment that they need is just absolutely overwhelming. But I found that these videos, their doctors and nurses remind us that they have a way of keeping their perspective by doing things that are somewhat out of the ordinary. So I found something called Corona War Zone Dancing Nurses. So it shows all of these nurses all over the country that are doing these dances. There are healthcare nurses and doctors from all over the country that got together to sing "You've Got a Friend." And some of the singing is not that great, but there are hundreds all over the country of people that put together this video singing "You've Got a Friend." There's a doctor named Jason Campbell who's called the TikTok Doc, and he's absolutely amazing. He's a very young doctor, and he does hip hop. He's actually got his own station now. And so he's an ICU doctor, and he works in the ER and ICU. And so you see him just coming out with his scrubs and everything on. And so he's doing this TikTok dance to raise everybody's spirits. And he actually has the other doctors dancing along with him. There's something called a get up challenge. There's actually a bunch of get up challenges, which evidently is a two-step cowboy boogie. The one that I really liked was in Logan Hospital, the ER staff there. So you can watch all of those. And what I just saw was that these doctors that are just ready to crash because they're so exhausted and burned out find ways to lift each other's spirit. And one of the things when you listen to all of them talk is that they really are about supporting each other, that letting them know that they're not alone in this and that they are helping each other to come through to the other side. So there's a YouTube station called Great Big Story, and it talks about regular people and what they've done to help fight this COVID situation that we're in. And so there was a woman who had a friend who was a nurse and there wasn't enough PPE. And so she got on social media and she made this video and she asked for the PPE. And within 24 hours, she had 40 pairs of goggles and 300 masks. There's a costume director at the Minnesota Opera who switched her staff around so that 24/7 they were making masks and PPE. There's a manufacturer who designs custom horse supplies for horses, for performance horses. And she changed her whole studio around. So she now produces 5,000 masks a month. Distilleries around the country have changed so that they're not producing alcohol anymore. They're actually producing hand sanitizer. There is a chef named Cassandra in DC who supplies 8 hospitals with meals twice a day. And on Easter, she brought in 200 meals for all of the ER workers and ICU workers. There is another organization that of bus drivers that got together and they supply 10,400 meals per month on their buses. They drive them around on their buses. There's another organization that supplies mobile hand washing stations. So they actually bring sinks out into the street where the homeless people congregate, and they hook them up to the fire plugs. So because they believe that homeless people, being able to wash your hands is a right that every homeless person should have. So they've actually brought these sinks out into the street, which I found absolutely amazing. There's a 16-year-old kid that was studying to be a flight attendant, to be a pilot. And so he now flies his planes to critical access hospitals and delivers meals to the roofs of these hospitals, 16 years old. There's a woman who raises Siberian Huskies who brings groceries and medical supplies to the homebound. I could go on and on and on, but it was just shocking for me to understand that amidst all of this, there are so many just regular Joe Schmoes out there that have decided they want to devote themselves to solving some of the problems that we're having. So how can we ask ourselves to be our best selves? What can we do to be more brave, to have more courage, and to show more heart? How can you change your belief systems and allow yourself to see the thoughts that are keeping you from being more loving and more open-hearted? Fear is the enemy. It causes us to shut down, to hoard supplies, to close ourselves off emotionally and spiritually. Love is always the answer. If we are to have a brave new world, we must take responsibility for changing ourselves. If every single person accepts the challenge to change, to open their hearts and their minds, to be more compassionate and more loving, to listen better and be kinder and more gentle with ourselves and with each other, we will be on our way. We have to be the change we want to see. It's up to us, every single one of us. Look inside yourself, sit in the quiet, and connect with God. Ask Him to give you the courage and the grace and the dignity. Be brave enough to risk loving more deeply, and more authentically. We can only have a better life by changing ourselves, one step at a time, one day at a time, one person at a time, beginning with ourselves. We can and we must create a brave new world. And so it is. All right, I am turning the recording off.